And so we're going to have Aaron Fair, the Assistant Director and Archivist at the Sequoia National Research Center at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, presenting American Indian Doughboys from Oklahoma in their own words. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and it took a lot of work to get it down to 20 minutes. So I could probably talk about it for 3 days. So I am squeezing a lot into it today. There we go. So approximately 12,000 American Indians and Alaska Natives served in World War I. 2,000 of those called Oklahoma home. They volunteered and they were drafted. They served in the Army, Navy, Marines, and Army Air Service, and in positions ranging from machine gunners to bakers to ambulance drivers. What motivated them to join the U.S. military? What did they experience? And what were the lasting impacts of their service? Today, I hope to answer these questions and more by taking a look at their own words left in interviews, letters, and questionnaires. Kiowa Moses Pulaw was from Mountain View, Oklahoma, and served in the 162nd Depot Brigade, where he achieved the rank of sergeant. He was a former student of Haskell Institute. In a letter published in the Indian Leader on September 27, 1918, he wrote, "I am very glad to say that we Kiowa boys are not slackers and are doing our bit when our country called. Remember us in your prayers. We have gone to risk our lives, for we are true Americans and uphold the stars and stripes. Someday in the far future, this great conflict will end, and we Kiowa boys will come marching home to our folks and will tell them about our wonderful trips." Cherokee William Baldridge of Sallisaw was training at Fort Douglas, Utah, when he wrote a letter back to Chilocco in June 1918. He wrote, "We are training hard every day and getting ready to cross the pond this fall sometime. I am anxious to go at any moment. I am in the war to do my bit and help save our native land, America." Choctaw Charles McGilberry wrote a letter from Camp Travis, Texas in February 1918 saying, "At last I am able to tell you that I am a soldier. I feel humble but mighty proud. Once more I can feel that I am doing what is expected of every able-bodied young man with love of country burning fervently in his bosom." Some of the men had trouble enlisting, like Comanche Norton Takechi. In a letter dated February 24, 1918, he wrote, "I had to have written statements about my birth before they can take me on board the ship. They couldn't accept my words as I told them about my birth. I told the commander that I was more American than he was, and he laughed. And he said, 'It was true, but we must go by the law.'" American Indians served in integrated units, although there are well-documented exceptions of all Indian units. However, most experiences were similar to that of Caddo Maurice Badoka, who was one of only 3 American Indians in his wireless telegraph class of 215 men at the Students' Army Training Corps at the University of Oklahoma. He wrote, "I was appointed corporal about a week ago, and all the boys call me chief, and I am the only red here. There are 2 other Indian boys here, but you can't tell them from the rest, as they have only about a 4th Indian blood." Arapaho sailor Joshua Seartree was very unhappy being the only Indian aboard his ship, the USS San Francisco. He wrote to the Indian agent at Concho begging to be released from the Army. In his letter dated July 16, 1917, he wrote, "I know I would be more satisfied if I was with the 2 or more Indian boys from my home. I want to go into the Army as a volunteer, as I know there are quite a number of Indian boys from Pawnee who were my schoolmates while I was enrolled at the government school at Phoenix, Arizona." Sadly, he was not able to transfer to the Army, but stayed in the Navy for 2.5 years until his honorable discharge. A majority of the American Indians that served in World War I had attended or graduated from off-reservation boarding schools. While the motivations behind the boarding school education was to strip them of their tribal identities and break their ties to their communities, many of the men wrote that they were grateful for the military training they received while attending the boarding schools. In a letter to the Chilocco superintendent, Edward Small, a member of the Iowa tribe of Oklahoma stationed at Fort Douglas, Utah, wrote, "Mr. Allen, I am very proud of dear old Chilocco and the training I received while I was there. My training is a big help to me in the Army life. I thank dear old Chilocco for what it did to help me in my training for service." Choctaw Eastman Mashantubbee shared a similar sentiment about his time at Haskell. He wrote, "There are some boys who have had military training and they are making good. I am glad to say that I am one of them. I certainly do appreciate the training I received while I was in school. Having had some experience in military training, I had great advantage over these boys. Of course, not all, but in my own company. I was made corporal and now am acting sergeant." In the training camp stateside, the Oklahoma men were preparing for war and ultimately desired to be sent overseas. Some received training in multiple areas before their final duties were assigned. Caddo George Shayashi wrote about his military experience in the 1919 Chilocco Senior Class Annual. He wrote, "The first 3 months and a half I spent in Army life was in cavalry training at Camp Stanley, Texas. The cavalry training is not so easy as one might think, but the little experience I had in it made me feel it is one of the best that a young fellow could get. Cavalry training just gives you a general view of what Army training is like. The best part of cavalry training is that the soldier boy wouldn't have to worry about walking, because the drilling mostly done on horseback." After I spent 3 months and a half in the cavalry, I was transferred to the field artillery. There I had the privilege of taking up the radio system in the study of wireless telegraph and telephone systems. The Army life is not easy, and what little experience I had in my Army life is something that I will never forget. Choctaw Joe Green was stationed at Camp Pike outside Little Rock, Arkansas. He wrote, "I have been in the Army almost 2 months, drilling 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Saturday and Sunday we have as holidays. Saturday morning we stand rifle inspection. So far I have passed this test. Some of the boys fail to pass and get extra duty." Pawnee Alexander Adams trained at Camp Logan near Houston, and he wrote, "I have been in the Army almost 4 months and I like it very well, although a soldier's life is no easy thing. I attended the Bayonet School of Arms during the month of October. Some of the things we had to do were jump 4 hurdles about 4 feet high, jump barbed wire entanglements that were about 1 foot high and 4 feet wide, and scale a wall which stood 8 feet high. I was transferred from Company I to the Machine Gun Company a while back, and I like it fairly well. There's nothing soft about packing those guns around. They all have to be taken apart and put back together in a certain time and kept polished." Several former Haskell and Chilocco students were stationed in the bakery units. Ray Whitetree in Oklahoma Seneca was a sergeant with Bakery Company 351 at Fort Riley, Kansas. In a letter published in May 1918, he wrote, "I am in the baker and cook school here. We get up at 3 a.m. and work until 3 p.m., then we go to school till 5 p.m. The school is very interesting. I am learning things that I never knew about baking. My chemistry and physics there at school helps me very much." John Shawnego was a Muskogee Creek from Holdenville, and he was with the Bakery Company 316 at Camp Funston, Kansas. He wrote, "Back in the bakery, you will find the boys in the 316th Bakery Company talking about what kind of bread we should make for the American Army to bring the war to an end. We are now making over 18,000 loaves of bread every 24 hours. The details are divided into 2 shifts, 30 men to each. There are 4 big ovens used by 2 shifts of bakery. The Army regulations require that bread must be from 18 to 24 hours old before it is delivered. Experiments proved that warm or fresh bread is not good for the soldier. I am now in charge of 2 large ovens that bake over 200 pounds at a time. I now rank as first-class quartermaster sergeant. American Indians also served in administrative positions like Clinton Maris, a Peoria from Miami, who was stationed at the Camp Travis Base Hospital. He wrote, "When I first came to this camp, I began driving an ambulance for the base hospital and gained a great deal of experience in first aid work. I drove for about 4 months, and a cry came for office men, and I was transferred to the registrar's office. In this office, we keep a record of every man in the hospital or that has ever been in it. Since this hospital opened in November 1917, 54,000 patients have been admitted and treated. At the present time, we have only about 1,000 on the register, and about 100 of them are overseas patients." Shawnee Elmer Prophet served as field clerk with the 32nd Division Adjutant General's Department. He wrote a long letter about his work early in the war in November 1917. "I was detailed over here to the Divisional Infantry School of Arms as a stenographer to Colonel Cousins and Adjutant Flugel. But I believe I am better satisfied with where I am than if I had been given the other. I received plenty of stenographic work here, and that is what I always preferred. The colonel recommended me for the position of Army Field Clerk last month, and I am patiently waiting for a reply to see if I am accepted. I made application just before I left Hayward, but it was for service in France and was put on file for my term when an opening was available. So I thought if I could get appointed here in the United States at some training camp, I would see what could be done. Sometime in the future, I expect to see France, and if I am mistaken, I will be very much disappointed." And many had that same mentality. Elmer Prophet did go to France, and he spent more than a year overseas. In a letter published in May 1918, he wrote, "While out in the country Sunday, some girls came by and we stopped and tried to talk with them, but it was some trying to make conversation. We had our dictionaries with us, so we got along pretty well. One of us would understand what they were saying every now and then, so we would tell each other. Then we would have to look in our dictionaries to answer them. I think it will be just a few months until we can understand most anything. When the next class starts, I'm going to take French lessons." Cheyenne Charles Shortneck also lamented not being able to communicate in French. He wrote, "The French people are nice people. The only trouble is we can't talk to them nor understand what they are saying to us. We are trying to learn to speak French. This country differs in many ways from the USA." Another perspective on France was shared by Cherokee Huckleberry Shell. He wrote, "I hope I will go back sometime at Carlisle and tell you about all my experience in France and the battle I went through. It was very exciting. It's fun to chase them Germans, and every time we run into Germans, they always have their hands up. I never seen the Germans that could fight. Whenever they see Americans, they are always on their feet running." Joseph K. Dixon was a photographer and a lecturer, and he worked for Rodman Wanamaker and found the struggles of the American Indian particularly compelling and fought on their behalf for full American citizenship. To that end, he felt that demonstrating their efforts during the war would turn sentiment in their favor and set about collecting their stories through interviews and questionnaires. Dixon interviewed Jacob Leader at Camp Mills, Long Island on April 30th, 1919. Leader served on the Stokes Mortar Platoon with fellow Pawnee Walter Keyes. And Leader is to the right of the picture and Keyes is to the left. In his interview, he described his experiences in great detail. Leader said, "Our Stokes was always a signal for everything to come over from the German lines. Our shells created such havoc that they had to get us. Machine guns, heavy artillery, etc. were all brought into requisition when our mortars opened up. It was a strange feeling to stand with no cover right in the heart of the firing and feel that at any moment might realize your utter annihilation. When a shell would strike near us, I would say, well, the next is mine." Another interview by Dixon was with Cherokee Charles Robert Ward at Camp Devon, Massachusetts in June 1919. Ward said, "I was out after snipers. I just got out on the hill. I was lying on the ground. They told me that there were 4 snipers who were playing havoc with our machine guns and that they must be brought down, and I was detailed to bring them down. I had not more than stretched myself on the ground before the sniper got after me. A bullet struck my helmet in front and went out the back, ripped the back of my coat clear down. I had shot one sniper at my left. And then it happened that the other snipers fired and struck the side of the helmet, and it went clear through and beyond me. I thought it was time for me to be getting out of there. And as quickly as possible, I brought down both of those snipers and then the third one and was off." And if you notice this photograph, there are 2 bullet holes in his helmet that you can see in that photo. Osage Leo McGuire served as an ambulance driver in France and was the first American to be awarded a Distinguished Service Cross in July 1918. In a letter to his sister, McGuire downplayed his experiences that led to his medal. He said, "A shell connected with me and scattered my car around the neighboring landscape. I escaped uninjured. I was wearing the scapulars that Sister Basilissa had sent me through you. Something was watching over me that day." However, if you read his DSC citation, it says, "The ambulance was blown from the road by the explosion of the shell and he was knocked unconscious by the shock." So he downplayed it so his sister wouldn't worry about him. The Army wasn't the only one experiencing danger. Howard Foreman, an absentee Shawnee, served aboard the USS Silver Shell. In a letter published in the Carlisle Arrow and Red Man, Foreman wrote, "I had just arrived abroad and all is well. And believe me, my trip was an experience. It took us 16 days to cross the waters, and we were attacked twice by a German submarine, and one of the British steamers that was along with the convoy got sunk, and it was the one ahead of our ship. We did not get a chance to fire, but the American destroyers dropped about 12 depth bombs. I would like to tell you more about our trip, but the censors do not allow it." After the armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, changes occurred both on the front lines and on military bases stateside. William Yardy, a Muskogee Creek from Okmulgee, wrote, "I should say I had been to the front and I will never forget it. We were at the front when the armistice was signed. It seemed strange when the big roaring guns quit all at once. We sure gave the Huns good fighting at the last minute." Seminole John Johnson was stationed at Camp Pike when the armistice was signed. He wrote an article for the 1919 Chilocco Annual describing the scene, and it is very long. I have excerpted a lot of it. About 8 o'clock in the morning, the people commenced coming into the camp in cars with bells on the back or old clothes dragging on the ground and making all kinds of noises. Everybody that passed our barracks said to us that we were going home soon. There were about 4,000 soldiers who had just come to serve their country when the armistice was signed, so they paraded around the camp all day, and that evening they went home on the same train. I will never forget the day in camp when the World War ended. I was the only Indian there that day, and the people of Little Rock invited me to stay there, but I told them I couldn't stay another day or hour, as I was anxious to see my mother at home. I left Little Rock with 14 Oklahoma boys, and I got to my hometown at 4 o'clock in the morning, and my mother came after me the next day. Now that I am back in Chilocco again, I am proud to say that I was in Uncle Sam's army when the war ended. The 6 months at Camp Pike seemed like 6 years to me, but I was glad to be called Uncle Sam's doughboy. So how did the war impact American Indians in Oklahoma? Many who served in the American military were not American citizens. Franklin Anderstand was one of them. He was a Peoria from Miami who believed that the United States would ultimately do what was right or fair for its veterans. In an interview with Dixon at Camp Dix, New Jersey on May 18, 1919, Stan said, "I think it benefited our people. The war was carried on for the benefit of humanity. I was glad that I was in it and did my bit. While I wear the scars of a wound and while I wear one wound stripe, I would gladly carry more wound scars and wear more wound stripes than the one that I have, had they been needed to do the business. The war will help my people because the country will feel that we staked all to help win freedom, and now we are counting on the country to give us that freedom. They must and they will see to it that we are fairly dealt with. On June 2nd, 1924, Congress granted American citizenship to all American Indians that did not have citizenship through other means. The legacy of Oklahoma American Indian Doughboys is still unfolding as the World War I Valor Medals Review Task Force is underway to determine whether certain minority servicemen were overlooked for a Medal of Honor due to their race. To date, 12 Oklahoma American Indians have qualified for review by the task force. I hope that their legacies will ultimately reflect their brave acts of valor. Thank you.